Welcome to ZzZscience. Close your eyes for a moment and breathe. Feel the air move through you, cool and steady, filling spaces you've never seen but have always known. There is a world inside you, vast and ancient, quiet and endlessly alive. It moves in rhythms older than mountains, in patterns written long before the first human ever stood upright. This world is you. Every part of it, every tiny corner, every microscopic valley and river. And tonight, we are going to visit that world together. You are made of approximately 37 trillion cells. The number is so large it loses meaning, like trying to count grains of sand on an endless beach. But each one of these cells is alive in its own way, working quietly, never stopping, never asking for recognition. Some will live only days, others many years. Some are born every second, fresh and new, while others fade away, having completed their purpose. This is the slow dance of existence happening right now inside you. Let yourself drift smaller now. Imagine yourself shrinking, gently, peacefully, until the world around you begins to change. You are approaching the threshold where the human eye can no longer follow, where the everyday world dissolves into something far stranger and far more beautiful. You are entering the realm of the cell. A single cell might seem impossibly small. Most human cells measure between 10 and 30 micrometers across. A micrometer is 1/1,000,000th of a meter. And yet, within this minute space, there exists a complexity that rivals anything humans have ever built. Imagine a city, humming with activity, with power stations and libraries, with transportation networks and waste disposal systems. Now compress all of that into a space invisible to your naked eye. That is a cell. The boundary of a cell is its membrane, a thin envelope made of molecules called lipids. These lipids arrange themselves into two layers, creating a flexible barrier between the inside world and the outside world. The membrane is studded with proteins that act as gates and sensors and receivers. Some allow certain substances to pass through while blocking others. Some detect chemical signals from the environment. Some reach out and touch neighboring cells, forming connections that turn isolated units into communities, into tissues, into you. Pass through this membrane now, in your imagination, and you find yourself floating in the cytoplasm, the cell's interior ocean. It is not quite liquid and not quite gel, but something in between. Water makes up most of it, but dissolved within it are salts and sugars, amino acids and nucleotides. Thousands of different molecules drifting in what looks like randomness, but is actually exquisite order. The largest structure you'll see is the nucleus, the cell's library and command center, a sphere or oval enclosed in its own double membrane. Inside the nucleus, coiled and folded in ways that took evolution billions of years to perfect, is your DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, the thread upon which your entire biological identity is written. If you could take the DNA from a single human cell and stretch it out, it would extend about 2 meters in length. 2 meters of information, all packed into a nucleus so small you cannot see it without a microscope. This DNA is organized into 46 chromosomes, 23 inherited from your mother, 23 from your father. Along these chromosomes are approximately 20,000 genes, segments of DNA that contain the codes for making proteins. The language of DNA is simple and profound. DNA is made of only 4 chemical letters, 4 nucleotides called adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. In scientific shorthand, they are known as A, T, C, and G. These 4 letters, repeated millions of times in varying sequences, contain all the information needed to build and maintain a human being. The letters pair with each other in a specific way. A always bonds with T, and C always bonds with G. This pairing creates the famous double helix structure, two strands spiraling around each other. When a gene needs to be used, when the cell needs to make a particular protein, a molecular machine called RNA polymerase comes to the gene and begins to read it. It creates a copy of the code using a molecule called messenger RNA. This RNA carries the genetic message out into the cytoplasm, where ribosomes will read it and assemble amino acids into a protein according to the instructions. This process happens thousands of times every second in every cell of your body. Your DNA is unique to you, different from every other human who has ever lived or ever will live, with the exception of an identical twin. And yet, 99.9% of your DNA is the same as every other human's. The differences between people come down to variations in less than 0.1% of the genome. And that heritage goes back further than humanity. You share about 98% of your DNA with chimpanzees, roughly 90% with mice, about 60% with fruit flies, and even 50% with bananas. This is because all life on Earth descended from a common ancestor billions of years ago. You carry within you the biochemical legacy of the first living things. Floating in the cytoplasm, you'll notice organelles called mitochondria. These are the power plants of the cell, the sites where nutrients are converted into usable energy. Mitochondria are fascinating because they were once independent organisms. About 2 billion years ago, a larger cell engulfed a smaller bacterium capable of using oxygen to generate energy, and instead of digesting it, the two formed a partnership. Each of your cells contains hundreds or even thousands of mitochondria, depending on how much energy that cell needs. The mitochondria take in glucose and oxygen, both delivered by your blood, and through a series of chemical reactions, they produce ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is the universal energy currency of the cell. Here is something quietly beautiful. You inherited all of your mitochondria from your mother. The egg cell that became you was packed with mitochondria, while the sperm cell contributed almost none. So the mitochondrial DNA you carry came from your mother, who got it from her mother, in an unbroken chain stretching back through countless generations. Near the mitochondria, you might see the endoplasmic reticulum, a network of folded membranes that extends throughout the cell like a complex system of roads and tunnels. Some parts are studded with ribosomes, where many proteins are made. Other parts are smooth, involved in the synthesis of lipids. Proteins made in the rough endoplasmic reticulum often travel to the Golgi apparatus, which looks like a stack of flattened sacks. The Golgi acts as a post office, modifying proteins, sorting them, and packaging them into vesicles that carry the proteins to their final destinations. There are lysosomes, small sacs filled with digestive enzymes, capable of breaking down worn-out organelles or invading bacteria. They are the recycling centers of the cell, ensuring that nothing goes to waste. And threading through the cytoplasm is the cytoskeleton, a dynamic network of protein fibers that gives the cell its shape and allows it to move. All of these structures work together in harmony. They communicate through chemical signals, through physical connections, through changes in their environment. A cell is not a collection of isolated parts, but an integrated whole, a system so finely tuned that it can sense changes in its environment and respond appropriately. The process of cell division is tightly controlled because it must be. If cells divide too often or at the wrong times, the result is cancer. If cells divide too seldom, tissues fail to renew themselves. The balance is maintained by a network of checkpoints and signaling pathways, by proteins that monitor the cell's health, by systems that can initiate apoptosis, programmed cell death, when a cell is too damaged to be repaired. Your body produces about 2 to 3 million new red blood cells every second. Every second, millions of new cells, each one a tiny capsule designed to carry oxygen from your lungs to every other cell in your body. Red blood cells are unusual because they have no nucleus, no DNA, no mitochondria. Nothing but a membrane filled with a protein called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin contains iron atoms, and it is the iron that gives blood its red color. White blood cells are diverse and complex, part of your immune system, each type specialized for a different aspect of defense. Some patrol the bloodstream and tissues, engulfing bacteria. Some produce antibodies. Some coordinate immune responses and directly attack infected or cancerous cells. These cells can recognize the difference between self and non-self, between the molecules that belong to your body and those that do not. Platelets rush to damaged blood vessels and seed to the exposed surfaces, forming a plug. They also activate the clotting cascade, producing fibrin, a protein that forms a mesh over the wound, stabilizing the clot. All of these cells originate in the bone marrow, the soft tissue inside your bones. The marrow contains stem cells, cells that have not yet committed to a particular fate, that retain the potential to become any type of blood cell. This process, called hematopoiesis, churns out billions of new cells every day. Cells are organized into tissues, groups of similar cells working together for a common function. There are 4 basic types of tissue in the human body. Epithelial tissue covers surfaces, both external and internal. Your skin is epithelial tissue, a barrier between your internal world and the external environment. The lining of your mouth, your digestive tract, your lungs, all epithelial tissue. These cells divide frequently because they are often exposed to wear and tear. Connective tissue includes bone and cartilage, blood, adipose tissue, and the loose tissue that fills spaces between organs. All connective tissues consist of relatively few cells, scattered within a large amount of extracellular matrix. In bone, the matrix is hardened with calcium and phosphate crystals. In blood, the matrix is the liquid plasma. Muscle tissue is specialized for contraction, for generating force and movement. There are 3 types: skeletal muscle, which moves your bones, cardiac muscle, which makes up the heart, and smooth muscle, which lines blood vessels and organs. Muscle cells are packed with proteins called actin and myosin, which slide past each other to produce contraction. Nervous tissue is specialized for communication. It is composed of neurons, the cells that generate and conduct electrical impulses, and glial cells, which support and protect the neurons. A neuron has a cell body containing the nucleus, and extending from it are dendrites and an axon. Dendrites receive signals from other neurons, and the axon transmits signals to other neurons or to muscles. Neurons communicate through a combination of electrical and chemical signals. When a neuron is stimulated sufficiently, it generates an action potential, a rapid change in electrical charge that travels down the axon like a wave. When the action potential reaches the end of the axon, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters into the synapse, the tiny gap between neurons. The neurotransmitters bind to receptors on the next cell, either exciting it or inhibiting it. Your brain contains roughly 86 billion neurons, each one connected to thousands of other neurons, forming a network of staggering complexity. This is the physical substrate of your thoughts, your memories, your emotions, your sense of self. Somehow, from the electrochemical chatter of billions of cells, consciousness emerges. Let's move now to a larger scale, to the organs, the structures built from tissues working together. The heart beats about 100,000 times a day, pushing blood through roughly 100,000 kilometers of blood vessels. The lungs provide a surface area of about 70 square meters for the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. The liver performs over 500 different functions, including detoxifying harmful substances. The kidneys filter your entire blood volume about 60 times a day, removing waste products. Each organ does not work alone. They are integrated into systems. The cardiovascular system delivers oxygen and nutrients to every cell. The respiratory system exchanges gases with the environment. The digestive system breaks down food and absorbs nutrients. The urinary system eliminates waste and regulates water balance. The endocrine system regulates metabolism and many other processes. The immune system defends against pathogens. The nervous system coordinates the body's responses. The musculoskeletal system provides structure and enables movement. This balance is called homeostasis, the maintenance of stable internal conditions despite changes in the external environment. Your body works continuously to keep your internal temperature around 37 degrees Celsius, to keep the pH of your blood close to 7.4, to keep your blood glucose levels within a narrow range. When something starts to drift away from the set point, sensors detect the change and trigger responses that bring it back. The ability to maintain homeostasis is what distinguishes a living organism from a non-living object. A rock does not regulate its internal state. But you are different. You are a system that resists entropy, that maintains order and organization. This requires energy, which is why you must eat and breathe. And yet, for all this maintenance, the body is not static. It changes. It grows from a single cell into a fully formed human. It matures, reaches peak physical capability, and then gradually declines. This decline is what we call aging, the accumulation of many processes, the shortening of telomeres, the accumulation of mutations in DNA, the buildup of damaged proteins, the gradual loss of stem cells, the stiffening of connective tissues. But even as the body ages, it retains remarkable capacities. Bones broken can heal, skin cut can knit itself back together, the liver can regenerate, the nervous system can form new connections. Your brain is not a fixed circuit, but a dynamic network, constantly rewiring itself. Memory itself is a physical phenomenon. When you form a memory, the pattern of connections between certain neurons has been modified. The memory is not stored in a single location, but distributed across networks of neurons. This is why memories are not perfect recordings, but reconstructions, influenced by your current state, by other memories. Let's think for a moment about what it means to be you. You are not the same collection of atoms you were 7 years ago. Most of the atoms in your body have been replaced. The cells of your body have mostly turned over. Even your neurons have changed, forming new connections, losing old ones. The you of today is, in a very real physical sense, not the same as the you of the past. And yet, you feel like the same person. This continuity is maintained not by the persistence of particular atoms or even particular cells, but by the persistence of patterns, of information, of the organization that constitutes you. You are a pattern in flux, a dance of molecules, a story that matter tells. And the story began long before you were born. The atoms in your body were forged in the hearts of stars. Hydrogen and helium were created in the Big Bang about 13.8 billion years ago. All the heavier elements were created later in the nuclear furnaces of stars and scattered into space when those stars exploded as supernovae. You are made of stardust, quite literally. Every atom of calcium in your bones, every atom of iron in your blood, was created in a star that died before the Earth was born. You carry the cosmos within you. The universe, through you, has become aware of itself. Human beings share a common ancestor with all other life on Earth. Go back far enough, and you share an ancestor with chimpanzees, with mice, with fish, with insects, with plants, with bacteria. You have inherited the accumulated solutions to billions of years of challenges, encoded in your genes and expressed in your body. Consider your eyes. They evolved over hundreds of millions of years. The first light-sensitive cells were simple patches that could detect the presence or absence of light. Gradually, these patches became recessed into pits, which allowed them to detect the direction of light. The opening of the pit narrowed, forming a pinhole that produced a sharper image. A transparent covering formed, eventually thickening into a lens. Muscles evolved to change the shape of the lens. The retina became more sophisticated, with different types of photoreceptor cells sensitive to different wavelengths of light, giving you color vision. Your eyes can detect a single photon of light under ideal conditions. When a photon strikes a molecule called rhodopsin in a rod cell in your retina, it causes a change in shape that triggers a cascade of chemical reactions, ultimately leading to a change in the electrical charge across the cell's membrane. The brain receives signals from roughly 126 million photoreceptor cells in each eye, and from these signals, it constructs your visual experience of the world. But seeing is not passive reception. Your brain actively interprets the signals, filling in gaps, making assumptions, creating a coherent picture from incomplete information. Your perception is a construction, a model built by the brain. While it is usually accurate enough for you to navigate the world successfully, it is not a perfect representation of reality. All of your senses work in similar ways, converting physical stimuli into neural signals that the brain interprets. Sound is detected by hair cells in the cochlea. Smell begins in the olfactory epithelium. Taste is detected by taste buds. Touch is mediated by receptors throughout your skin. Your senses provide you with information about the world, but they are not windows onto reality. They are interfaces, evolved to provide the information you need to survive and reproduce, not to reveal the full truth of the universe. Your perception is limited, tailored to your ecological niche, and yet it is sufficient for you to navigate your environment. Let's return now to the circulatory system, to the blood that flows through you. Blood flows through a closed system of vessels, a continuous loop that begins and ends at the heart. The heart is a double pump, with the right side pumping blood to the lungs and the left side pumping blood to the rest of the body. The right atrium receives deoxygenated blood returning from the body. This blood is pushed into the right ventricle, which then pumps it to the lungs. In the lungs, the blood flows through capillaries that surround the alveoli, where gas exchange occurs. Oxygen from the air diffuses into the blood, binding to hemoglobin. Carbon dioxide diffuses from the blood into the alveoli to be exhaled. The oxygenated blood returns to the left atrium, which pushes it into the left ventricle. The left ventricle pumps blood through the aorta, which branches into smaller arteries, which branch into arterioles, which finally branch into capillaries. In the capillaries, oxygen and nutrients diffuse into the surrounding tissues, and carbon dioxide and waste products diffuse into the blood. The capillaries merge into venules, which merge into veins, which carry the blood back to the right atrium. The entire journey takes about 1 minute when you are at rest. During exercise, your heart beats faster and the circulation time decreases. Your heart rate is regulated by the autonomic nervous system and by hormones like adrenaline. The walls of arteries are thick and elastic, stretching with each pulse and then recoiling. You can feel this pulse in arteries close to the surface. It is one of the most fundamental rhythms of your body, a rhythm that began before you were born, that continues every moment of your life. Blood pressure is the force exerted by the blood against the walls of the vessels. It is regulated by multiple mechanisms, including the constriction or dilation of blood vessels, the volume of blood, and the force of the heartbeat. The lymphatic system is closely related to the circulatory system. As blood flows through capillaries, some plasma leaks out into the surrounding tissues. Most of this fluid is reabsorbed, but some enters the lymphatic vessels. The fluid, now called lymph, flows slowly through these vessels, passing through lymph nodes along the way. Lymph nodes filter the lymph, removing pathogens and debris. They are sites where immune responses can be initiated. The immune system protects you from a hostile world filled with bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. It has two main branches: the innate immune system and the adaptive immune system. The innate immune system responds quickly but non-specifically. It includes physical barriers like the skin and mucous membranes. It includes white blood cells like neutrophils and macrophages that patrol the body and engulf invaders. It includes the inflammatory response, which clears away damaged tissue and recruits cells needed for repair. The adaptive immune system is slower but highly specific and capable of memory. The key players are B cells and T cells. B cells produce antibodies, proteins that bind to specific molecules on pathogens. T cells come in several types. Helper T cells coordinate the immune response. Cytotoxic T cells directly kill infected cells. Regulatory T cells help prevent the immune system from attacking the body's own tissues. When you are first exposed to a pathogen, your adaptive immune system takes time to ramp up. But some of the lymphocytes that respond become memory cells, which persist for years. If you are exposed to the same pathogen again, these memory cells respond quickly, often preventing illness. This is the basis of immunity and of vaccination. The immune system is remarkable, but it is not infallible. Sometimes it fails to eliminate a pathogen. Sometimes it overreacts, causing allergies. Sometimes it attacks the body's own tissues, causing autoimmune diseases. Sometimes it fails to detect cancer cells. Let us step back from disease and focus on the normal, healthy functioning of the body. Consider breathing, something you do about 20,000 times a day without thinking. Each breath draws air through your nose or mouth, down your trachea, through the bronchi, ending in the alveoli. The alveoli are surrounded by capillaries, and the barrier between the air and the blood is thin enough for gases to diffuse across rapidly. Oxygen crosses into the blood, and carbon dioxide crosses into the alveoli. Breathing is controlled automatically by the brainstem, which monitors the levels of carbon dioxide and oxygen in the blood and adjusts your breathing rate accordingly. You can voluntarily override this control, but only for a limited time. Eventually, the urge to breathe becomes overwhelming. Eating provides the raw materials and energy your body needs. Food is broken down in the digestive system. Digestion begins in the mouth, where your teeth break food into smaller pieces, and saliva contains enzymes that begin to break down carbohydrates. You swallow, and the food passes into the stomach. The stomach churns the food, mixing it with gastric juice, a highly acidic fluid containing enzymes. The partially digested food is gradually released into the small intestine, where most digestion and absorption occur. The small intestine receives secretions from the pancreas, which provides digestive enzymes, and bile from the liver, which emulsifies fats. The inner surface of the small intestine is covered with millions of tiny projections called villi, which massively increase the surface area available for absorption. Nutrients pass through the cells lining the villi and enter either the bloodstream or the lymphatic system. What the small intestine cannot absorb passes into the large intestine, which absorbs water and electrolytes, turning the liquid into solid feces. The colon also houses trillions of bacteria, the gut microbiota, which help digest certain substances and produce vitamins. The feces are stored in the rectum and eventually expelled. The kidneys filter your blood, removing waste products and excess substances while retaining what you need. Each kidney contains about 1 million nephrons. Blood enters the glomerulus under high pressure, and water and small molecules are filtered into the tubule. As the filtrate flows through the tubule, the cells lining it selectively reabsorb most of the water and useful substances back into the blood. The remaining fluid, now called urine, flows into the bladder. The kidneys do more than just filter waste. They regulate the volume and composition of your body fluids, adjusting how much water and electrolytes are excreted. They regulate blood pressure. They produce hormones. The kidneys are master regulators of your internal environment. Now let's consider what happens when you sleep. Sleep is essential. All animals with complex nervous systems sleep. Humans typically need 7 to 9 hours per night. Sleep consists of different stages. Non-REM sleep has 3 stages, progressing from light sleep to deep, slow-wave sleep, which is the most restorative. After cycling through the non-REM stages, you enter REM sleep, when most vivid dreaming occurs. Your brain becomes highly active, but your muscles are paralyzed, preventing you from acting out your dreams. Throughout the night, you cycle through these stages, spending more time in deep sleep early and more time in REM sleep toward morning. Sleep deprivation has serious consequences, impairing attention, memory, and mood. The brain needs sleep to clear out waste products that accumulate during waking hours. Dreams are among the most mysterious aspects of sleep. You spend about 2 hours per night dreaming. The content of dreams is influenced by your experiences and concerns, but the way these elements are combined is often surreal. The function of dreaming is still debated, but it may help process memories and emotions. Sleep is not a luxury, but a biological necessity, as essential as food and water. It is a state in which your body and mind recover, in which memories are consolidated, in which growth and repair occur. And so, we arrive at the end of this first part of our journey, having explored the microscopic world of cells, the information encoded in DNA, the organs that cooperate to maintain your life, the senses that connect you to the world, the circulation of blood, the defense by the immune system, and the mystery of sleep. We have seen that you are not a single thing, but a community, a vast collaboration of cells and molecules and processes, all working together, all part of the same pattern, the same living story. Rest now if you wish, and when you are ready, we will continue our journey. Let us continue our journey, drifting deeper now into the nervous system, that vast network of communication that connects every part of you. We are going to explore this system in greater detail, and we will visit the brain, that 3-pound universe folded inside your skull, where thoughts arise like gentle waves on an infinite ocean. The nervous system is divided into 2 main parts: the central nervous system, consisting of the brain and spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system, consisting of all the nerves that branch out to reach every part of your body. But this division does not fully capture the unity of the system, the way information flows continuously between center and periphery. Begin with a single neuron. A typical neuron has a cell body where the nucleus resides, and extending from this body are many dendrites, branched processes that receive signals, and one axon, a long, thin fiber that carries signals away. The axon can be remarkably long. The sciatic nerve contains axons that can be more than 1 meter in length, making them the longest cells in your body. The electrical signal that travels along an axon is called an action potential. At rest, the inside of the neuron is negatively charged relative to the outside. When the neuron is stimulated sufficiently, voltage-gated sodium channels open and sodium ions rush into the cell. This causes depolarization. If the depolarization reaches a threshold, it triggers a rapid cascade. The inside of the cell becomes briefly positive. This is the action potential, a spike of electrical activity that lasts about 1 millisecond. Immediately after the peak, sodium channels close and potassium channels open. Potassium ions flow out, restoring the negative charge. This process happens at one location on the axon and triggers the same process in the adjacent section, so the action potential propagates along the axon like a wave. The speed of this wave depends on the diameter of the axon and whether it is myelinated. Myelin is a fatty insulating material that wraps around many axons. It is not continuous but segmented, with small gaps called nodes of Ranvier. The action potential jumps from node to node, which is much faster than continuous propagation. The thickest myelinated axons can conduct action potentials at speeds over 100 meters per second. When the action potential reaches the end of the axon, it arrives at a synapse, the junction between neurons. The action potential cannot jump the synaptic cleft, so the signal must be converted from electrical to chemical. The arrival of the action potential causes calcium ions to flow into the terminal, triggering vesicles filled with neurotransmitter molecules to fuse with the membrane and release their contents into the cleft. The neurotransmitters diffuse across and bind to receptors on the next cell. The effect depends on the type of receptor and neurotransmitter. Some are excitatory, making the next cell more likely to fire. Others are inhibitory. Glutamate is the main excitatory neurotransmitter in the brain, and GABA is the main inhibitory neurotransmitter. There are many others: dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, acetylcholine, each with specific functions. Each neuron receives input from thousands of other neurons. The neuron integrates all of these inputs, and if the combined effect is sufficient, it generates an action potential. This is how the nervous system processes information, by summing up many small signals, by deciding whether to fire or not to fire. The peripheral nervous system carries signals between the central nervous system and the rest of the body. It includes sensory neurons, which carry information from sensory receptors toward the central nervous system, and motor neurons, which carry commands to muscles and glands. The peripheral nervous system is divided into the somatic nervous system, which controls voluntary movements, and the autonomic nervous system, which controls involuntary functions like heart rate and digestion. The autonomic system has two branches: the sympathetic, which prepares the body for action, and the parasympathetic, which promotes rest and digestion. The spinal cord is a long bundle of nervous tissue that runs down the vertebral column. It serves as a conduit for signals traveling between the brain and the body, but it also processes some information locally, generating reflexes. A reflex is a rapid, automatic response to a stimulus. The simplest reflex is the stretch reflex. When a muscle is stretched, sensory neurons detect this and send signals to the spinal cord. These sensory neurons synapse directly onto motor neurons, which send signals back to the muscle, causing it to contract. This happens within about 50 milliseconds. The spinal cord is organized into segments, each associated with a particular region of the body. There are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. Damage to the spinal cord can interrupt the flow of information, resulting in paralysis and loss of sensation below the level of the injury. Now let us ascend to the brain, the most complex structure in the known universe. The human brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons, and perhaps an equal number of glial cells, the support cells that nourish and protect neurons. The brain weighs about 1.4 kilograms, roughly 2% of total body weight, but it consumes about 20% of the body's oxygen and glucose. The brain is divided into several major regions. The brainstem connects the brain to the spinal cord and controls basic life functions. It includes the medulla oblongata, which regulates heart rate, breathing, and blood pressure, the pons, which helps coordinate breathing, and the midbrain, which is involved in vision, hearing, and motor control. Just above the brainstem is the cerebellum, which coordinates movement, balance, and posture. It receives input from the sensory systems and uses this information to fine-tune motor commands, ensuring that movements are smooth and accurate. Damage to the cerebellum results in jerky, uncoordinated movements. Above the brainstem are structures involved in emotion, memory, and motivation. The hippocampus is crucial for forming new declarative memories. Without it, you cannot form new memories of facts or events. The amygdala is involved in processing emotions, especially fear. The hypothalamus regulates many homeostatic functions, including body temperature, hunger, thirst, and circadian rhythms. It also controls the pituitary gland, the master gland of the endocrine system. The thalamus is a relay station that passes sensory information to the cerebral cortex. The basal ganglia are involved in motor control, habit formation, and reward processing. The largest part of the human brain is the cerebral cortex, the wrinkled outer layer. The cortex is about 2 to 4 millimeters thick, and its surface is folded into ridges and grooves, greatly increasing its surface area. If you could unfold the cortex, it would cover about 2,500 square centimeters. The cortex is divided into 2 hemispheres, connected by the corpus callosum. Each hemisphere is divided into 4 lobes: frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital. The frontal lobe is involved in executive functions, including planning, decision-making, and controlling behavior. The prefrontal cortex is particularly important for these higher-level cognitive functions. The frontal lobe also contains the primary motor cortex, which controls voluntary movements. The motor cortex is organized somatotopically, with adjacent areas controlling adjacent body parts. The parietal lobe is involved in processing sensory information, particularly touch, temperature, and pain. It contains the primary somatosensory cortex, which receives input from sensory receptors throughout the body. The parietal lobe is also involved in spatial awareness. The temporal lobe is involved in processing auditory information and in memory. The primary auditory cortex receives input from the ears. Other parts are involved in understanding language, recognizing faces, and forming and retrieving memories. The occipital lobe is dedicated to vision. The primary visual cortex receives input from the eyes and processes basic visual features like edges, colors, and motion. Different areas specialize in different aspects of vision. But the cortex is not just a collection of specialized areas. Much of it is devoted to association areas, regions that integrate information from multiple sources, that link perception to memory to action, that support the highest levels of cognition. Human cognition and consciousness arise from the activity of this vast network of neurons. But how? This is the hard problem of consciousness, the question of how subjective experience emerges from physical processes in the brain. We can measure brain activity, we can correlate patterns of activity with particular thoughts or perceptions, but we do not yet understand how neural activity gives rise to the subjective qualities of experience. What we do know is that consciousness depends on the integrity of specific brain systems, particularly the cortex and its connections to the thalamus and brainstem. Consciousness is not an all-or-nothing phenomenon, but comes in degrees. You are fully conscious when awake and alert, less conscious when drowsy, even less during deep sleep. Consider memory, that essential aspect of consciousness. You are, in large part, the sum of your memories. Memory is not a single thing, but several different systems. Declarative memory is the memory of facts and events. Procedural memory is the memory of skills. Episodic memory is the memory of specific events in your life. Semantic memory is the memory of general knowledge. Memories are not stored in a single location, but distributed across networks of neurons. When you experience something, the pattern of neural activity leaves a trace, a set of changes in the strength of synapses. This is called consolidation. Sleep plays a crucial role in consolidation. Retrieving a memory means reactivating the pattern of neural activity. But each time you retrieve a memory, you also have the opportunity to modify it. This is why memories are not fixed, but malleable, why they can be distorted by suggestion, by later experiences. Let's turn now to emotion. Emotions are complex states that involve changes in physiology, in behavior, and in subjective feeling. When you are afraid, your heart races, your muscles tense, and you feel fear. Emotions are generated by circuits in the brain, particularly the limbic system, and they are influenced by neurotransmitters and hormones. The amygdala is crucial for processing fear and other emotions. It receives sensory information and can trigger rapid emotional responses, even before the cortex has fully processed the information. The prefrontal cortex plays a role in modulating and regulating emotional responses. You can, to some extent, control your emotions through cognitive strategies. Emotions serve important functions. They motivate behavior, guiding you toward beneficial actions and away from harmful ones. They also facilitate social interactions, allowing you to communicate your internal state to others. Social connection itself is a fundamental human need. Loneliness is associated with negative health outcomes, including increased risk of cardiovascular disease, weakened immune function, and depression. The brain has evolved to be exquisitely social, to track relationships, to understand others' intentions and emotions. Language is perhaps the most sophisticated tool for social connection. Language allows you to share your thoughts and feelings, to coordinate actions, to pass on knowledge across generations. It also allows you to think in new ways, to represent abstract concepts. Language is processed primarily in the left hemisphere. Two key areas are Broca's area, involved in speech production, and Wernicke's area, involved in language comprehension. Damage to Broca's area results in difficulty speaking. Damage to Wernicke's area results in fluent but nonsensical speech. The two hemispheres are not identical in function. The left hemisphere is generally more involved in logical reasoning and language. The right hemisphere is more involved in spatial processing and recognizing faces and emotions. But both hemispheres contribute to most cognitive tasks. Let us think now about the nature of thought itself. Thoughts are patterns of neural activity, structured by your knowledge, your goals, your current situation. Working memory is a limited capacity system, able to hold about 4 to 7 items at once. Attention is the mechanism by which you select what to process, what to bring into conscious awareness. You cannot pay attention to everything at once, so your brain filters, prioritizing some stimuli over others. Sustained attention is effortful and can be fatiguing. Creativity involves generating novel and useful ideas, combining existing knowledge in new ways. It emerges from the interaction of multiple networks. The default mode network, active when you are not focused on the external world, plays a role in creative thinking. So does the executive control network, active during focused thought. Decision-making involves multiple brain systems. Some decisions are made quickly and intuitively. Other decisions are made slowly and deliberately. Both modes are valuable, and effective decision-making often involves knowing when to rely on intuition and when to engage in deliberate analysis. Human beings are not perfectly rational. We are subject to cognitive biases, systematic errors in thinking. We tend to overestimate our abilities, to seek out information that confirms our beliefs, to judge probability based on how easily examples come to mind. These biases are byproducts of cognitive shortcuts that are generally useful, but can sometimes lead us astray. The world as you experience it is a construction of your brain. What you experience is a model, a representation built from sensory input, prior knowledge, and expectations. This model is usually accurate enough for practical purposes, but it is not the same as reality itself. Consider color. Objects do not have color. They reflect certain wavelengths of light. Your eyes detect these wavelengths, and your brain constructs the experience of color. Color is a perceptual phenomenon. Different species perceive color differently. The same is true for all of them. Your perceptions. Sound is not out there in the world, but in your head, a representation of pressure waves in the air. Pain is not in your injured hand, but in your brain, a signal that something is wrong. Your sense of your own body is a construction, a model maintained by your brain. Your sense of self, your feeling of being a unified, continuous person, is also a construction. It arises from the integration of sensory information, from memories, from narratives you tell yourself. It can be disrupted by brain damage. The human brain is not a finished product. It is plastic, shaped by experience throughout life. In childhood, the brain is especially plastic, with synapses forming and pruning at a tremendous rate. This early plasticity is why childhood is such a critical period for learning. But plasticity does not end in childhood. The adult brain continues to change in response to experience. Learning new skills, acquiring new knowledge, all leave traces in the brain. London taxi drivers have been found to have larger hippocampi than average. Musicians show changes in the motor cortex and auditory cortex. These changes are evidence of experience-dependent plasticity. Plasticity is also the basis of recovery after brain injury. If a part of the brain is damaged, other parts can sometimes compensate. This is especially true in young children, whose brains are more plastic. But even adults can recover substantial function with rehabilitation. The brain's plasticity is a double-edged sword. It allows you to learn and adapt, but it also means that the brain can be shaped by harmful experiences. Chronic stress can alter the brain, damaging the hippocampus, increasing activity in the amygdala, weakening the prefrontal cortex. Trauma can have lasting effects on brain development and function. Mental health is as much a matter of brain health as physical health is a matter of body health. Conditions like depression, anxiety, and schizophrenia are disorders of brain function arising from alterations in neural circuits and neurotransmitter systems. These disorders are complex, influenced by genetics, by life experiences, by environmental factors. Let us consider now the passage of time as it relates to the brain. Time is not a constant subjective experience. It can seem to slow down in moments of danger, to speed up when you are bored. As you age, time seems to accelerate. This may be because novel experiences create more detailed memories, and you have fewer truly novel experiences as you age. The brain measures time in several ways. For very short intervals, timing depends on the dynamics of neural activity. For longer intervals, timing seems to involve the accumulation of some internal signal. For even longer intervals, timing depends on memory. There is a rhythm to brain activity, oscillations in electrical activity at different frequencies. Delta waves are prominent during deep sleep. Theta waves are associated with drowsiness. Alpha waves are associated with relaxed wakefulness. Beta waves are associated with active thinking. Gamma waves are associated with attention. These oscillations may play functional roles in coordinating activity across different brain regions. Let us return to the body, to the interplay between brain and body. The brain controls the body, but the body also influences the brain. This is the concept of embodied cognition, the idea that the mind is not confined to the brain, but is shaped by the body. Your gut is sometimes called the second brain because it contains a complex network of neurons, the enteric nervous system. The gut also communicates with the brain through the vagus nerve and through hormones and immune signals. The gut microbiota can influence this communication, affecting brain function and behavior. This is the gut-brain axis. The immune system also communicates with the brain. When you have an infection, immune cells release cytokines, which can affect brain function, making you feel tired and lethargic. This is called sickness behavior, an adaptive response that encourages rest. But chronic inflammation can have negative effects on the brain. Hormones are another major route of communication between the body and the brain. The endocrine system regulates many aspects of physiology and behavior. The hypothalamus controls the pituitary gland, which regulates other glands. Hormones can have profound effects on the brain because neurons have receptors for hormones. Consider the stress response. When you perceive a threat, the amygdala activates the hypothalamus, which triggers two pathways. The first is the sympathetic nervous system, which releases adrenaline, increasing heart rate and blood pressure. The second is the HPA axis, which releases cortisol. Cortisol helps sustain the stress response. In the short term, the stress response is adaptive, but chronic stress can be harmful. Prolonged elevation of cortisol can damage the hippocampus, suppress the immune system, and contribute to anxiety and depression. But there are ways to mitigate stress. Exercise is one of the most effective. Physical activity reduces cortisol levels, increases endorphins, and promotes neuroplasticity. Social support is another buffer. Mindfulness and meditation can reduce stress and improve emotional regulation. Sleep is also crucial. The relationship between mind and body is intimate and bidirectional. Your thoughts and emotions can influence your physical health, and your physical health can influence your thoughts and emotions. This is why a holistic approach is important, addressing not just disease, but well-being. The mind has some capacity to influence the body. The placebo effect is the phenomenon where a person experiences real improvement after receiving a treatment that has no active ingredient, simply because they believe it will work. Expecting pain relief can trigger the release of endorphins, producing actual pain relief. The placebo effect reveals the power of expectation. Let us think now about the diversity of human brains. No two brains are exactly alike. Some of this diversity is due to genetics, some to experience. Autism spectrum disorder is characterized by differences in social communication and by restricted, repetitive behaviors. People with autism often have different patterns of brain connectivity. Dyslexia is a learning disorder characterized by difficulty with reading. People with dyslexia often struggle with decoding words, but they may have strengths in other areas. These and other forms of neurodiversity remind us that there is no single normal brain. Brains vary, and that variation is part of the richness of the human experience. The brain changes across the lifespan. Brain development begins in the embryo. By the time you are born, your brain has most of its neurons, but it is far from mature. During infancy and childhood, the brain grows rapidly. Different brain regions mature at different rates. The prefrontal cortex matures late, not reaching full maturity until the mid-20s. Adolescence is a time of significant brain reorganization. Synaptic pruning continues. The prefrontal cortex is still developing, which is why adolescents often show less impulse control than adults. Adolescence is also a critical period for identity formation. In adulthood, the brain reaches a plateau, relatively stable but still plastic. Cognitive abilities peak at different ages. Fluid intelligence peaks in the 20s. Crystallized intelligence continues to increase into middle age and beyond. In later adulthood, aging brings gradual changes. Brain volume decreases slightly. The number of synapses declines. Blood flow decreases. These changes are associated with some decline in cognitive function, particularly in processing speed and working memory. However, many cognitive abilities remain stable. Older adults often have better emotion regulation and greater wisdom. Not all aging brains decline at the same rate. Factors that promote healthy brain aging include physical exercise, mental stimulation, social engagement, a healthy diet, adequate sleep, and managing cardiovascular risk factors. Dementia is not a normal part of aging, but a pathological process. Alzheimer's disease is the most common cause. It is characterized by the accumulation of abnormal proteins in the brain which disrupt neural function. The disease typically begins in the hippocampus, causing memory problems, and then spreads to other regions. The prospect of losing one's cognitive abilities is frightening. It underscores the importance of cherishing the time you have, of maintaining your brain health, of staying engaged with life. The brain is a remarkable organ, the seat of your consciousness, your personality, your memories. It is, in a very real sense, the part of you that is most essentially you. As we draw this part of our journey to a close, Take a moment to appreciate the extraordinary organ inside your skull, the billions of neurons firing in intricate patterns, all of it happening right now, sustaining your thoughts, your perceptions, your sense of self. You are a conscious being, aware of yourself and your world, capable of reflection and imagination. All of this emerges from the activity of your brain, from the dance of molecules and cells. It is a profound mystery and a profound gift. We continue our journey now, moving through the body like a slow, gentle current, carried by the rhythm of your heartbeat, the steady pulse that has accompanied you every moment since before you were born. Let us follow the blood as it flows, tracing the pathways that connect every part of you, delivering what is needed, carrying away what is no longer wanted. Your heart sits in the center of your chest, slightly to the left, a muscular organ about the size of your fist, weighing roughly 300 grams. It beats about once per second when you are at rest, 60 to 100 times per minute, 100,000 times per day, about 2.5 billion times in an average lifetime. With each beat, it pumps about 70 milliliters of blood. Over a lifetime, the heart pumps enough blood to fill more than 1 million barrels. The heart's contractions are coordinated by electrical signals generated within the heart itself. In the right atrium, there is a cluster of specialized cells called the sinoatrial node, the heart's natural pacemaker. These cells spontaneously generate electrical impulses at a regular rhythm. The impulse spreads through the atria, causing them to contract. Then it reaches the atrioventricular node, where it is briefly delayed. From there, it travels rapidly through specialized conducting fibers, spreading throughout the ventricles and causing them to contract from the bottom up. This electrical activity can be measured on the surface of the skin using an electrocardiogram. The heart's rhythm is not fixed, but adjusts to your body's needs, regulated by the autonomic nervous system and by hormones. When you exercise, sympathetic nerves and adrenaline increase the rate and force of contractions. When you rest, parasympathetic nerves slow the heart down. Let us imagine ourselves now as small as a red blood cell, and let us travel through the circulatory system. We begin in the left ventricle. The ventricle contracts, and we are propelled through the aortic valve into the aorta, the largest artery. The aorta arches upward from the heart, then curves back down. As we move through it, we feel the pressure wave generated by the heart's contraction, the pulse. The aorta branches, sending arteries to the head and arms, to the abdomen and legs. We might follow a branch that leads to the brain, the carotid artery. The carotid divides into smaller arteries, which divide again and again, forming a tree of vessels. The arteries become arterioles and then capillaries, tiny vessels so narrow that red blood cells must pass through single file. The capillaries form a dense network, bringing blood into close contact with every neuron. Blood flow to the brain is carefully regulated because neurons are extremely sensitive to oxygen deprivation. The brain receives about 15% of the blood pumped by the heart. In the capillaries, oxygen diffuses from the blood into the tissue, and carbon dioxide diffuses from the tissue into the blood. Nutrients pass from the blood into the tissue, and waste products pass in the opposite direction. The capillary walls are only 1 cell thick, thin enough for gases and small molecules to cross. In the brain, the capillaries have an additional feature, the blood-brain barrier, formed by tight junctions between endothelial cells. This barrier protects the brain from toxins and pathogens, but it also makes it difficult to deliver drugs to the brain. Only small, lipid-soluble molecules and a few specific substances can cross. Having delivered oxygen, the blood, now deoxygenated, flows from the capillaries into venules, which merge into veins. The veins carry the blood back toward the heart. Unlike arteries, veins have thin walls and low pressure. Blood moves through them slowly, assisted by the contraction of surrounding muscles, and by one-way valves that prevent backflow. The veins from the brain merge into large vessels that eventually empty into the superior vena cava, which empties into the right atrium, completing the circuit. The blood we have followed has traveled from the left ventricle, through arteries to the brain, through capillaries where it exchanged gases and nutrients, and back through veins to the right atrium. The journey took only a few seconds. Now the blood is pumped from the right atrium into the right ventricle, and from there through the pulmonary arteries to the lungs. In the lungs, the arteries branch into capillaries that surround the alveoli, the tiny air sacs where gas exchange occurs. Each alveolus is surrounded by a network of capillaries. The barrier between the air and the blood is incredibly thin, less than 1 micrometer, allowing gases to diffuse rapidly. Oxygen from the inhaled air crosses into the blood, binding to hemoglobin. Carbon dioxide crosses in the opposite direction, entering the alveoli to be exhaled. The oxygenated blood flows from the capillaries into the pulmonary veins, which carry it back to the left atrium. From there, it is pumped into the left ventricle, and the cycle begins again. This is the double circulation of the cardiovascular system, with the right side pumping blood to the lungs and the left side pumping blood to the rest of the body. Blood does not always take the same path. Blood traveling to the digestive organs follows a unique route. After passing through the capillaries in the intestines, where it may pick up nutrients, the blood flows through the hepatic portal vein to the liver. This portal circulation allows the liver to process the nutrients before they enter the general circulation. Only after passing through the liver does the blood return to the heart. The kidneys also receive a substantial blood supply, about 20% of the heart's output. This high flow rate is necessary for their filtering function. Blood enters through the renal artery, which branches into arterioles that lead to the glomeruli, where filtration occurs. The filtered blood exits through another set of arterioles, which form a second network of capillaries, where reabsorption and secretion occur. The skin receives a variable blood supply, adjusted to help regulate body temperature. When you are hot, blood vessels in the skin dilate, bringing more blood to the surface where heat can be lost. When you are cold, blood vessels constrict, reducing blood flow and conserving heat. This thermoregulation is controlled by the hypothalamus. The circulatory system is not just a transport network, but also a communication network. Hormones secreted by glands travel through the blood to reach their target cells. Immune cells circulate in the blood, patrolling for pathogens. Platelets circulate, ready to respond to any breach in a blood vessel. Consider the regulation of blood pressure, which must be maintained within a narrow range. Blood pressure is determined by the amount of blood pumped by the heart and the resistance of the blood vessels. Several systems regulate blood pressure. The baroreceptor reflex is a rapid mechanism. Baroreceptors in the walls of large arteries detect changes in blood pressure and send signals to the brainstem. If blood pressure drops, the brainstem responds by increasing sympathetic activity, which increases heart rate and constricts blood vessels. If blood pressure rises, sympathetic activity decreases and parasympathetic activity increases. The renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system is a slower mechanism. When blood pressure drops, the kidneys release renin, which converts a protein in the blood into angiotensin. Angiotensin is a powerful vasoconstrictor that raises blood pressure. It also stimulates the adrenal glands to release aldosterone, which causes the kidneys to retain sodium and water, increasing blood volume. The kidneys also regulate blood pressure by adjusting blood volume. If blood pressure is too high, the kidneys can excrete more water. If it is too low, they can retain water. The hormone ADH plays a key role in this regulation. These regulatory systems illustrate a fundamental principle. Homeostasis is maintained by multiple overlapping mechanisms, operating on different timescales, providing redundancy and robustness. But the circulatory system is not invulnerable. Atherosclerosis, the buildup of fatty deposits in artery walls, is a major cause of cardiovascular disease. The plaques narrow the arteries, reducing blood flow, and they can rupture, triggering clots that can completely block flow. If this happens in a coronary artery, it causes a heart attack. If it happens in an artery supplying the brain, it causes a stroke. Atherosclerosis develops over decades, influenced by multiple risk factors. High levels of LDL cholesterol contribute to plaque formation. Other risk factors include high blood pressure, diabetes, smoking, obesity, a sedentary lifestyle, and genetics. Many of these are modifiable, which means that lifestyle changes can significantly reduce risk. Eating a healthy diet, exercising regularly, not smoking, maintaining a healthy weight, and managing stress can all help protect the cardiovascular system. The heart itself can be affected by disease. Heart failure is a condition where the heart cannot pump enough blood to meet the body's needs. It can result from damage to the heart muscle or from chronic conditions that strain the heart. Heart valve disease is another category of problems. The heart has 4 valves that ensure blood flows in the correct direction. If a valve becomes narrowed or does not close properly, it can strain the heart and impair its function. The cardiovascular system, for all its robustness, is a reminder of the body's vulnerability, of the importance of caring for your health. Let us turn now to the lymphatic system and the immune system. As blood flows through capillaries, some plasma leaks out into the interstitial space. Most returns to the capillaries, but about 10% remains and is collected by the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is a network of vessels that parallels the blood vessels. Lymphatic capillaries are blind-ended tubes that allow fluid to enter but not to leave. The fluid, now called lymph, flows through larger vessels, passing through lymph nodes along the way. Lymph nodes are small structures that filter the lymph, trapping pathogens and debris, and housing white blood cells that can initiate immune responses. If you have ever had swollen lymph nodes during an infection, it was because immune cells in the nodes were multiplying and fighting the infection. The immune system protects you from bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. You are constantly exposed to microorganisms. Most are harmless or beneficial. The bacteria in your gut contribute to digestion and train your immune system. But among the harmless microbes are pathogens that can cause disease. Your first line of defense is physical and chemical barriers. Your skin is a formidable barrier. The skin also secretes oils and sweat that create an acidic environment hostile to many microbes. The mucous membranes that line your respiratory, digestive, and urogenital tracts are also barriers. They secrete mucus that traps microbes, and they have cilia that move the mucus out of the body. Your body openings are guarded by secretions with antimicrobial properties. Saliva contains enzymes that break down bacterial cell walls. Tears contain lysozyme. Stomach acid kills most ingested microbes. The vagina has an acidic environment that inhibits pathogens. Once inside, pathogens encounter the immune system. The innate immune system responds quickly but non-specifically. It includes white blood cells like neutrophils and macrophages that patrol the tissues and bloodstream, engulfing anything that looks foreign. These cells recognize pathogens through pattern recognition receptors. When a pathogen is detected, the cell engulfs it in a process called phagocytosis, then fuses the vesicle with a lysosome filled with digestive enamel, enzymes and toxic substances that kill and break down the pathogen. Inflammation is a key component of the innate immune response. When tissues are damaged or infected, cells release chemical signals that cause blood vessels to dilate and become leaky. Blood flow increases, bringing more immune cells. Plasma leaks into the tissue, causing swelling. The increased activity generates heat. The swelling and chemicals can stimulate pain receptors. These are the classic signs of inflammation: redness, heat, swelling, pain. The innate immune system also includes the complement system, a group of proteins that circulate in the blood. When activated by pathogens, complement proteins trigger a cascade that results in coating pathogens for destruction, punching holes in their membranes and attracting immune cells. But the innate immune system has limitations. It responds the same way to every pathogen, and it has no memory. This is where the adaptive immune system comes in. The adaptive immune system is slower to activate, taking several days, but it is highly specific and has memory. The adaptive immune system is based on lymphocytes, B cells and T cells. Each lymphocyte carries receptors that can recognize a specific antigen. Your body can produce lymphocytes that collectively recognize billions of different antigens. This diversity is generated through genetic recombination during lymphocyte development. When a pathogen enters your body, it is taken up by dendritic cells, which process it and display fragments on their surface. The dendritic cells travel to a lymph node and present the antigen to T cells. If a T cell's receptor recognizes the antigen, the T cell becomes activated and begins to divide rapidly, producing many copies. Some become effector T cells, which carry out their functions. Some become memory T cells, which persist for years. Helper T cells coordinate the immune response by releasing cytokines. Cytotoxic T cells directly kill infected cells. They recognize infected cells by detecting pathogen proteins displayed on the cell surface. When a cytotoxic T cell recognizes an infected cell, it releases substances that cause the cell to undergo apoptosis. B cells respond to antigens differently. When a B cell's receptor binds to an antigen, and if it receives help from a helper T cell, it becomes activated and begins to divide. Some become plasma cells, which produce antibodies. These antibodies circulate in the blood and lymph, binding to the pathogen and marking it for destruction. Other B cells become memory B cells, which persist and provide long-term immunity. This is the basis of vaccination. A vaccine exposes you to a harmless version of a pathogen, stimulating the adaptive immune system to produce memory cells without causing disease. The adaptive immune system is remarkably effective, but it is not infallible. Pathogens have evolved strategies to evade it. Some viruses mutate rapidly. Some hide inside cells. Some suppress the immune response. HIV directly attacks helper T cells, crippling the immune system. Autoimmune diseases occur when the immune system mistakenly attacks the body's own tissues. In type 1 diabetes, immune cells attack the insulin-producing cells of the pancreas. In rheumatoid arthritis, they attack the joints. In multiple sclerosis, they attack the myelin sheaths around axons. Allergies are another instance of the immune system going awry. In an allergic reaction, the immune system responds to a harmless substance as if it were dangerous. The response involves IgE antibodies and mast cells, which release histamine and other inflammatory mediators, causing sneezing, itching, swelling, difficulty breathing. In severe cases, anaphylaxis can occur, requiring immediate treatment. The immune system is essential for survival, but capable of causing harm when it malfunctions. It also interacts with other systems in complex ways. It communicates with the nervous system and the endocrine system. Chronic inflammation can contribute to cardiovascular disease, diabetes, depression, and aging. As we come to the end of this part of our journey, having explored the flowing rivers of blood and lymph, the beating heart, the intricate defenses that protect you, let us take a moment to rest in the awareness of these processes, happening quietly, continuously within you. Your heart beats, your blood flows, your immune cells patrol. It happens on its own, a gift of evolution, a legacy of billions of years of life, finding ways to persist. You are alive, and aliveness is a process, a doing, not a being. It is the circulation of fluids, the communication of cells, the constant adjustment and response that keeps you in balance, that keeps you here, breathing, thinking, feeling, aware. We move forward now, deeper into the mechanics of movement itself, into the systems that allow you to interact with the world, to reach and grasp, to walk and run, to express yourself through gesture and action. The musculoskeletal system gives your body its structure, its ability to resist gravity, to maintain posture, to generate force and motion. It is a framework animated by intention, translating thought into physical reality. Begin with the skeleton, the scaffolding of bones that supports everything else. You have 206 bones in your adult body, though you were born with about 300. Many of the bones you had as an infant were made of cartilage or were separate pieces that later fused together. Bones are living tissues, not inert structures. They are constantly being remodeled, broken down by osteoclasts and rebuilt by osteoblasts. This remodeling allows bones to adapt to the stresses placed on them, becoming stronger where they bear more load. It also allows bones to repair themselves when fractured. A bone has a complex architecture designed to maximize strength while minimizing weight. The outer layer is compact bone, dense and strong. Inside is spongy bone, which has a honeycomb-like structure. This design provides strength with less weight. The spaces in spongy bone are filled with bone marrow, where blood cells are produced. Bones serve many functions beyond support. They act as levers, amplifying the forces generated by muscles. They store minerals, particularly calcium and phosphate. They protect vital organs. The skull protects the brain. The ribcage protects the heart and lungs. The vertebrae protect the spinal cord. Where bones meet, they form joints. Some joints are immovable, like those between skull bones. Others allow limited movement, like those between vertebrae. But the most mobile joints, the synovial joints, give you the freedom to move in complex ways. A synovial joint is a marvel of engineering. The ends of the bones are covered with articular cartilage, a smooth material that reduces friction. The joint is enclosed in a joint capsule, lined with a synovial membrane that secretes synovial fluid, which lubricates the joint. Ligaments hold the bones together and limit the range of motion. Different synovial joints allow different types of movement. Hinge joints, like the elbow and knee, allow movement in one plane. Ball and socket joints, like the shoulder and hip, allow movement in multiple planes. The shape of the bones and the arrangement of ligaments determine what movements are possible. Now let us consider the muscles, the engines of movement. You have more than 600 skeletal muscles, accounting for about 40% of your body weight. Skeletal muscles are attached to bones by tendons, and when a muscle contracts, it pulls on the bone, creating movement. Muscles can only pull, not push, so they are arranged in opposing pairs. The biceps flexes your elbow, bending your arm. The triceps extends your elbow, straightening your arm. When the biceps contracts, the triceps relaxes, and vice versa. A skeletal muscle is made up of bundles of muscle fibers, which are elongated cells. Each fiber is packed with myofibrils, which contain the contractile proteins actin and myosin. The myofibrils are organized into repeating units called sarcomeres, which give skeletal muscle its striated appearance. When a muscle contracts, the myosin filaments pull on the actin filaments, sliding them toward the center. The sarcomere shortens, and since the myofibrils are made of many sarcomeres in series, the entire muscle fiber shortens. This is the sliding filament mechanism. The signal for contraction comes from motor neurons. Each motor neuron branches to innervate multiple muscle fibers, forming a motor unit. When the motor neuron fires an action potential, the signal travels down its axon and reaches the neuromuscular junction. At the neuromuscular junction, the action potential triggers the release of acetylcholine, which binds to receptors on the muscle fiber membrane. This causes the muscle fiber to depolarize, generating its own action potential that spreads across the fiber and down into it through T-tubules. The action potential triggers the release of calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. The calcium binds to troponin, causing a change in shape that moves tropomyosin out of the way, exposing binding sites on the actin filaments. Myosin heads, energized by ATP, can now attach to these sites. The myosin heads pivot, pulling the actin filaments, then detach and reattach further along. This continues as long as calcium and ATP are available. When the motor neuron stops firing, acetylcholine is broken down, the muscle fiber repolarizes, calcium is pumped back, tropomyosin blocks the binding sites again, and the muscle relaxes. The force a muscle generates depends on several factors. The size of the muscle matters. Larger muscles generate more force. The frequency of motor neuron firing matters. Repeated action potentials cause twitches to summate. The number of motor units activated matters. Fine movements involve only a few motor units, while powerful movements involve many. Muscle fibers come in different types. Slow twitch fibers contract slowly and generate less force, but they are highly resistant to fatigue. They have many mitochondria and are well suited for endurance activities. Fast twitch fibers contract quickly and generate more force, but they fatigue more rapidly. They rely more on anaerobic metabolism and are well suited for short bursts of intense activity. Endurance training increases the number and size of mitochondria, enhances blood supply, and improves the muscle's ability to use oxygen. Strength training causes muscle fibers to increase in size by synthesizing more contractile proteins. The nervous system also adapts, becoming more efficient at recruiting motor units. Muscles require energy. For very short, intense bursts, muscles use stored ATP and creatine phosphate. For activities lasting up to about 2 minutes, muscles rely primarily on anaerobic glycolysis, which produces ATP quickly but inefficiently and generates lactic acid. For longer activities, muscles rely on aerobic metabolism, using oxygen to completely break down glucose and fatty acids, producing much more ATP. This requires a continuous supply of oxygen delivered by the cardiovascular and respiratory systems. The coordination of all these muscles is orchestrated by the nervous system. Simple movements are controlled by the spinal cord. More complex movements involve the brainstem, the cerebellum, the basal ganglia, and the motor cortex. Walking, for example, is a rhythmic activity involving dozens of muscles. The basic rhythm is generated by central pattern generators in the spinal cord. The cerebellum monitors the movement and makes rapid adjustments. The basal ganglia help initiate the movement and regulate its force. The motor cortex sends commands specifying the overall goal and trajectory. Learning a new motor skill involves changes at all of these levels. Initially, movements are slow, deliberate, requiring conscious attention. With practice, they become faster, smoother, more automatic. The cerebellum learns the precise timing. The basal ganglia consolidate the sequence into a habit. Eventually, the movement can be performed with little conscious thought. This is procedural learning. Once learned, these skills are remarkably persistent. Movement is not just about muscles and bones. It is also about perception, about sensing your body's position and movement in space. This sense is called proprioception, and it relies on receptors in your muscles, tendons, and joints that detect stretch, tension, and position. Proprioception allows you to move without constantly looking at your limbs. Balance, or equilibrium, relies on information from 3 sources: the vestibular system in the inner ear, which detects head position and motion; vision, which provides information about your position relative to the environment; and proprioception. The brain integrates these 3 sources to maintain balance. The vestibular system consists of structures in the inner ear filled with fluid and containing hair cells. The semicircular canals detect rotational movements of the head. The otolith organs detect linear accelerations and the position of the head relative to gravity. Motion sickness occurs when there is a mismatch between the information from the vestibular system, vision, and proprioception. For example, if you are reading in a car, your vestibular system detects the motion, but your eyes do not. The brain receives conflicting signals and responds with nausea and dizziness. The body's ability to move is a source of joy and freedom, but it is also a responsibility. Physical activity is essential for health. It strengthens bones and muscles, improves cardiovascular and respiratory function, helps regulate weight, reduces the risk of chronic diseases, enhances mood and cognitive function, promotes sleep. Sedentary behavior is associated with numerous health problems. The body is designed to move, shaped by millions of years of evolution in which survival depended on physical activity. As you age, the musculoskeletal system gradually declines. Muscle mass decreases, beginning as early as the 30s. Bones lose density, becoming more fragile. Joints stiffen, ligaments and tendons become less elastic. But these changes are not inevitable and can be slowed by staying active, by engaging in strength and balance training, by maintaining good nutrition. Let us shift now from the mechanics of movement to the senses that guide it. We have already discussed vision, hearing, touch, taste, and smell, but there are others. Thermoception is the sense of temperature. Nociception is the sense of pain, a warning system that alerts you to tissue damage. Proprioception and equilibrioception, the senses of body position and balance. These senses work together, creating a rich, multi-sensory experience. When you eat, you are not just tasting, but also smelling, feeling the texture, sensing the true temperature, even hearing the sounds. When you walk, you are not just moving, but also seeing where you are going, feeling the ground, sensing your body's position, hearing the sounds around you. The brain integrates all of this information, creating a unified perception. Sensory perception is not passive but active. You do not simply receive sensory information, you seek it out, you direct your attention, you interpret it based on your expectations. This is why perception can be shaped by context, by suggestion. Consider the experience of pain. Pain is not just a sensation, but a complex experience involving sensory, emotional, and cognitive components. The sensory component is the detection of tissue damage by nociceptors. The emotional component is the unpleasantness, processed by the amygdala and anterior cingulate cortex. The cognitive component is the interpretation of the pain, processed by the prefrontal cortex. These components can be dissociated. People with damage to the anterior cingulate cortex can still detect painful stimuli, but do not find it unpleasant. Conversely, some chronic pain conditions involve little tissue damage, but the person experiences intense pain. Pain is not a direct readout of tissue damage, but a perception constructed by the brain. But let us not dwell on pain. Let us think instead about pleasure. The sensation of touch can be profoundly pleasurable. Gentle stroking activates C-tactile afferents that project to brain regions involved in emotional processing. This is why a hug can be so comforting, why holding hands with someone you love feels so good. Touch is not just a way of gathering information, but a way of connecting with others. The senses of taste and smell can also bring pleasure. The enjoyment of food is one of the fundamental pleasures of life. Eating is not just a necessity, but a source of pleasure, a social activity, a cultural practice. Music is another source of pleasure, engaging the auditory system in complex ways. Music can evoke powerful emotions, bring back memories, create a sense of connection. Listening to music activates the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine. Playing music engages even more of the brain. The visual arts similarly engage the visual system and the brain's aesthetic processing. Looking at a beautiful painting, walking through a stunning landscape, watching a sunset, these experiences can evoke feelings of awe and wonder. All of these sensory experiences are mediated by the body, by the receptors and nerves and brain regions that process sensory information. The body is not just a vehicle for the mind, but an integral part of experience, shaping what you perceive, how you feel, who you are. Your emotions are not just mental states, but bodily states. When you are afraid, your heart races, your breathing quickens, your muscles tense. When you are sad, your shoulders slump, your energy drops. These bodily changes are not just symptoms of the emotion, but part of the emotion itself. The brain and the body communicate bidirectionally, each influencing the other. This is why changing your body can change your mind. Physical exercise can reduce depression and anxiety. Deep, slow breathing can activate the parasympathetic nervous system, calming the stress response. Smiling can improve your mood. The body also communicates non-verbally. Your posture, your gestures, your facial expressions all convey information to others about your emotional state, your intentions. And you read these cues in others, often unconsciously. This non-verbal communication is rapid and powerful. Humans are exquisitely social creatures, and much of the brain is devoted to social cognition. We have mirror neurons, which fire both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing it. There are also brain regions specialized for recognizing faces, for interpreting facial expressions, for understanding others' intentions, a capacity called theory of mind. Theory of mind is the ability to attribute mental states to others and to understand that others may have different mental states than your own. It is crucial for social interaction, allowing you to predict others' behavior, to cooperate, to empathize. Theory of mind develops in early childhood and depends on the prefrontal cortex. Social connection is not just pleasant, but essential for health. Loneliness and social isolation are associated with increased risk of depression, cardiovascular disease, weakened immune function, cognitive decline, and earlier death. Conversely, strong social relationships are protective, buffering against stress, providing support, enhancing well-being. Humans evolved in social groups, and we are deeply wired for connection. Language is the primary tool for social connection, for sharing thoughts and feelings, for coordinating actions, for building culture. But connection also happens through shared activities, through touch, through simply being present with another person. The body plays a role in all of these forms of connection. As we come to the end of this part of our journey, having explored the skeleton and muscles, the senses and movements, the ways the body interacts with the world and with others, let us rest in the awareness of yourself as an embodied being, a consciousness housed in flesh and bone, capable of action and sensation, of pleasure and pain, of connection and isolation. You are not a mind trapped in a body, but a unified organism, body and mind inseparable. The body moves, senses, acts, connects. It is your interface with the world, the means by which you explore, express, and exist. It is fragile and strong, vulnerable and resilient, temporary and precious. It is, for now, your home. We find ourselves now in a quieter space, a place of reflection, where we consider not just the mechanisms of life, but its deeper patterns, the rhythms that govern existence, the cycles that repeat, the changes that unfold slowly across time. This is the realm of growth and development, of reproduction and inheritance, of aging and regeneration, of the body as it transforms from conception to old age. Let us begin at the very beginning, at the moment when life starts anew, when two cells merge to become one. This is conception, fertilization, the union of sperm and egg, and it is one of the most remarkable events in biology. A human egg is one of the largest cells in the body, about 100 micrometers in diameter, just barely visible as a tiny speck. It is surrounded by protective layers and contains not only 23 chromosomes from the mother, but also all the cellular machinery, the organelles, the nutrients needed to begin development. It is a complete, self-contained world, waiting. A sperm cell is one of the smallest cells, only about 50 micrometers long, most of that being the tail that propels it forward. The head contains 23 chromosomes from the father, tightly packed. The sperm is streamlined for one purpose: to reach the egg and deliver its genetic cargo. During sexual intercourse, hundreds of millions of sperm are released, but only a tiny fraction will reach the egg. The journey can take hours, and the sperm must swim against currents, through narrow passages, guided by chemical signals. It is a journey of attrition, and perhaps only a few hundred will reach the vicinity of the egg. When a sperm reaches the egg, it must penetrate the layers surrounding it. Enzymes on the sperm help it push through. The sperm membrane fuses with the egg membrane, and the sperm nucleus enters the egg. The moment the first sperm enters, the egg undergoes rapid changes to prevent other sperm from entering. This is essential because if more than one sperm fertilizes the egg, it will not develop normally. Inside the fertilized egg, now called a zygote, the nuclei of the sperm and egg move toward each other. They replicate their DNA, and then, as the zygote prepares for its first cell division, the chromosomes mix. The cell divides, creating two cells, each with 46 chromosomes, 23 from each parent. This is the beginning of development. The zygote begins dividing rapidly. After a few days, the embryo consists of a ball of cells. As division continues, a fluid-filled cavity forms, and the embryo becomes a blastocyst, with an outer layer that will form the placenta and an inner cell mass that will form the embryo itself. About 5 to 7 days after fertilization, the blastocyst reaches the uterus and begins to implant in the uterine lining. This is a critical and vulnerable period. Many early embryos do not survive to this point due to chromosomal abnormalities or other problems. It is estimated that perhaps half of all fertilized eggs fail to implant or are lost shortly after. Once implanted, the embryo begins a period of rapid development. The inner cell mass differentiates into 3 layers: the ectoderm, which will form the skin and nervous system; the mesoderm, which will form muscles, bones, and the circulatory system; and the endoderm, which will form the digestive and respiratory systems. This is gastrulation, and it establishes the basic body plan. Over the following weeks, the embryo takes shape. By the end of the 4th week, it is only about 4 millimeters long, but it already has a beating heart, a primitive brain, and the beginnings of limbs. By the 8th week, all the major organ systems are present. At this point, the embryo is called a fetus, and the remainder of development is primarily growth and maturation. The placenta develops into a remarkable organ that connects the fetus to the mother's bloodstream. It allows nutrients and oxygen to pass from mother to fetus, and waste products to pass in the opposite direction. It also acts as a barrier, protecting the fetus from some harmful substances. The placenta produces hormones that maintain the pregnancy. The fetus grows rapidly. By the end of the 3rd month, it is about 8 centimeters long. By the end of the 6th month, it is about 30 centimeters. By the time of birth, typically around 40 weeks, the fetus is about 50 centimeters long and weighs about 3 to 4 kilograms. During this time, the organs mature. The nervous system becomes more complex. Fat is deposited under the skin, and the lungs prepare for breathing air. Development in the womb is guided by genetic information, but also influenced by the environment. The mother's nutrition, stress levels, and exposure to toxins or infections can all affect the developing fetus. This is why prenatal care is so important. Birth is a dramatic transition from the aquatic environment of the womb to the air. Labor begins when hormonal signals trigger contractions of the uterus, which gradually dilate the cervix and push the baby through the birth canal. When the baby emerges and takes its first breath, the lungs fill with air, and the circulatory system reorganizes. The umbilical cord is clamped and cut, and the baby becomes an independent organism. But the newborn is far from fully developed. Human infants are born in a relatively immature state. A newborn cannot walk, cannot see clearly, cannot even hold up its own head. This is partly because of the constraints of birth. The human brain is very large, and if development continued much longer in the womb, the baby's head would be too large to pass through the birth canal. So human babies are born early and complete much of their maturation outside the womb. Infancy is a period of rapid growth and development. The brain grows faster than any other organ, nearly doubling in size during the first year. Neurons form connections at an astounding rate. The baby learns to see, to hear, to move, to interact with caregivers. Early experiences are crucial, shaping the developing brain. The infant is entirely dependent on caregivers for survival. This dependence is longer in humans than in any other species, requires caregivers to invest enormous time and energy. It also allows for a long period of learning, during which the child absorbs language, culture, skills, knowledge. The extended childhood is what allows human culture to flourish. Childhood is a time of continued growth and development. The body grows steadily. The brain continues to mature, with different regions developing at different rates. Motor skills become more refined, language abilities expand, social skills develop, cognitive abilities grow more sophisticated. Play is an important part of childhood, a way of exploring the world, of practicing skills, of learning social rules. Adolescence brings another period of rapid change. Puberty, the onset of sexual maturation, is triggered by hormonal changes. The hypothalamus begins releasing hormones that stimulate the pituitary, which releases hormones that act on the gonads. The gonads begin producing sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone in females, testosterone in males. These hormones drive the physical changes of puberty, the development of secondary sexual characteristics, the growth spurt, the maturation of reproductive organs. Puberty is also a time of significant brain reorganization. The prefrontal cortex is still maturing. The limbic system becomes highly active. This imbalance may contribute to the risk-taking behavior and emotional intensity often seen in adolescence. Adolescence is also a time of identity formation, of figuring out who you are, what you value, where you fit in the world. It is a time of separation from parents, of increasing independence, of forming close relationships with peers. These social relationships become intensely important. Adulthood brings physical maturity. The body reaches its peak physical capabilities in the 20s and then begins a slow, gradual decline. But adulthood is not just decline. It is also a time of continued growth in other domains, in wisdom, in emotional regulation, in expertise, in the capacity for intimate relationships, in the ability to contribute to society. For many adults, reproduction is a central concern. In females, the ovaries release one egg per month in a cycle regulated by hormones. If the egg is fertilized and implants, pregnancy begins. If not, the lining of the uterus is shed, resulting in menstruation. In males, the testes continuously produce sperm, millions per day, from puberty until old age. Reproduction is not just a biological process, but a social and emotional one. The decision to have children, the experience of pregnancy and childbirth, the raising of children, these are among the most significant experiences many people have. Not everyone chooses to have children, and not everyone can. Infertility affects about 10 to 15% of couples. It can result from problems in either partner. In females, causes include problems with ovulation, blocked fallopian tubes, age-related decline in egg quality. In males, causes include low sperm count, poor sperm quality. Infertility can be emotionally devastating, But there are treatments available, including assisted reproductive technologies. As adults age, the reproductive system gradually declines. In females, this culminates in menopause, the end of menstruation, which typically occurs in the late 40s or early 50s. The ovaries stop releasing eggs and producing estrogen and progesterone. The hormonal changes can cause symptoms like hot flashes and mood changes. After menopause, the risk of osteoporosis and cardiovascular disease increases. In males, the decline is more gradual. Testosterone levels decrease slowly and sperm production declines, but males generally retain the ability to reproduce into old age. Aging itself is a complex process, the result of multiple mechanisms. At the cellular level, aging is associated with the accumulation of damage. Damage to DNA, to proteins, to organelles. Cells have repair mechanisms, but these are not perfect, and over time, damage accumulates. Telomeres, the protective caps on chromosomes, shorten with each cell division, limiting the lifespan of cells. Some cells respond to damage by entering senescence, where they stop dividing but remain alive, secreting inflammatory molecules that can harm surrounding tissues. Senescent cells accumulate with age and contribute to aging and age-related diseases. Mitochondria also accumulate damage. Mitochondrial DNA is more vulnerable to damage than nuclear DNA. Damaged mitochondria are less efficient at producing energy. Mitochondrial dysfunction is implicated in aging and many age-related diseases. At the tissue and organ level, aging is associated with a decline in stem cells, reducing the body's ability to repair damage. Immune function declines, making older adults more susceptible to infections. The risk of cancer increases because mutations accumulate and the immune system becomes less effective. Aging is also associated with chronic, low-level inflammation, sometimes called inflammaging. This inflammation contributes to many age-related diseases, including cardiovascular disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, and arthritis. The causes include senescent cells, mitochondrial dysfunction, changes in the gut microbiota, and the accumulation of damaged molecules. But aging is not just decline. It is also a continuation of life, a stage with its own characteristics and possibilities. Many cognitive abilities remain stable or even improve with age. Emotional regulation often improves, with older adults experiencing greater emotional stability. Wisdom, the ability to integrate knowledge and experience to make sound judgments, is often associated with older age. There are interventions that can promote healthy aging. Physical activity is one of the most effective. Caloric restriction has been shown to extend lifespan in many species. Certain drugs are being studied for their potential to slow aging. Social engagement, mental stimulation, purpose, and meaning in life. These also contribute to healthy aging. People who remain socially connected, who continue learning, who have a sense of purpose, tend to age more successfully. Eventually, for all of us, aging ends in death. Death is the cessation of the processes that maintain life, the irreversible loss of consciousness, of the integrated functioning of the organism. It can come suddenly or gradually. The moment of death is not always clear-cut. Most jurisdictions now recognize brain death, the irreversible loss of all brain function, as the point of death. After death, the body begins to decompose. Cells run out of oxygen and ATP and begin to break down. The body returns to the elements from which it was made, completing the cycle of matter. In many cultures, the body is treated with reverence, buried or cremated in rituals that honor the deceased. Death is not just a biological event, but a social and spiritual one. But even as individuals die, life continues. The information in DNA is passed from generation to generation through reproduction. Your children, if you have them, carry your genes, and they will pass those genes to their children. In this way, You are connected to your ancestors and to all the generations that will come after. You are a link in a chain that stretches back billions of years. Evolution, the change in the genetic composition of populations over generations, is the process that has shaped all life on Earth. It operates through variation, selection, and inheritance. Variation arises from mutations and from the recombination of genes. Selection occurs because individuals with certain traits are more likely to survive and reproduce. Over many generations, this leads to adaptation. Humans are the product of evolution, shaped by millions of years of natural selection. Our large brains, our upright posture, our opposable thumbs, our capacity for language and culture, all evolved because they provided advantages to our ancestors. But evolution is not a ladder with humans at the top. It is a branching tree with humans as one twig among millions. Understanding evolution helps us understand ourselves, where we came from, why we are the way we are. It helps us understand health and disease. Many diseases are the result of mismatches between our evolved biology and our modern environment. Our ancestors lived as hunter-gatherers, and our bodies are adapted to that lifestyle. Modern life, with its abundant processed foods and sedentary lifestyles, creates challenges our biology is not fully equipped to handle. This mismatch is thought to contribute to many chronic diseases. But understanding is not destiny. We can use our knowledge to make choices that promote well-being, to create environments that support health. We have the capacity to shape our own future in ways that no other species does. As we come to the end of this part of our journey, having traced the arc of life from conception to death, from growth and development, aging and decline, let us appreciate the extraordinary journey that is a human life. You began as a single cell, containing all the information needed to build you. You grew in the darkness of the womb. You were born, helpless, and you grew, learning, changing, becoming yourself. You are still growing, still changing, even now. You are not the same person you were years ago, and you will not be the same person years from now. You are a process, a becoming, a story unfolding in time. And your story is part of a larger story, the story of life on Earth, the story of evolution, the story of the universe itself. The atoms in your body were forged in stars. You are made of ancient matter, animated by ancient processes, participating in an ancient dance that began billions of years ago and will continue long after you are gone. But your individual life, your consciousness, your experience, this is unique, unrepeatable, precious. You are here, now, aware, alive. That is a gift. We arrive now at the final part of our journey, and here, in this quiet, concluding space, we will gather together all the threads we have followed, all the systems and processes, and we will reflect on what it means to be a living human body, to carry within yourself this universe of cells and molecules, this consciousness that arose from matter, this brief, beautiful existence in the flow of time. Let us begin by returning to homeostasis, the maintenance of stable internal conditions. Homeostasis is not a single mechanism, but a principle, a way of understanding how the body regulates itself. Every system we have discussed participates in homeostasis. The cardiovascular system regulates blood pressure and ensures delivery of oxygen and nutrients. The respiratory system maintains the balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide. The kidneys regulate water and electrolyte balance. The endocrine system coordinates responses through hormones. The nervous system monitors and adjusts all of these functions continuously. Homeostasis is achieved through feedback loops. In negative feedback, the most common type, a change triggers a response that counteracts the change, bringing the variable back toward a set point. This is like a thermostat that maintains a constant temperature. Your body uses negative feedback to regulate body temperature, blood glucose, blood pressure, pH, and countless other variables. Positive feedback is less common, but equally important in certain situations. In positive feedback, a change triggers a response that amplifies the change. Childbirth involves positive feedback. Contractions push the baby against the cervix, which triggers the release of oxytocin, which causes stronger contractions, continuing until the baby is born. Homeostasis gives the body its resilience, its ability to withstand disturbances, to maintain function in the face of changing conditions. But homeostasis has limits. If the disturbance is too large or prolonged, if the regulatory systems are overwhelmed, homeostasis can fail, and the result is disease or death. Aging is, in part, the gradual decline in the capacity to maintain homeostasis. But let us also appreciate the remarkable capacity for repair and regeneration. When you cut your skin, the wound heals, new skin growing to close the gap. When you break a bone, the bone knits back together. When part of your liver is removed, the remaining liver can regenerate. When you exercise and damage muscle fibers, they repair themselves and grow stronger. Healing is a complex process involving inflammation, cell migration, cell proliferation, and tissue remodeling. It is coordinated by growth factors and by interactions between different cell types. Inflammation clears away damaged tissue and recruits cells needed for repair. Once the acute phase subsides, repair begins. Cells proliferate and migrate, laying down new matrix, forming new blood vessels, gradually filling in the gap. Over time, the tissue remodels, and function is restored. Not all tissues have the same capacity for regeneration. The liver, bone, and skin regenerate well. The nervous system regenerates poorly. Neurons in the brain and spinal cord generally do not divide in adulthood, so if they are damaged, they are not replaced. However, the nervous system does have plasticity, the ability to reorganize, to form new connections, and this can allow some recovery of function. Recent research has revealed that even the adult brain can generate new neurons in certain regions. The hippocampus is one site where new neurons are continuously produced. These new neurons contribute to learning and memory. Exercise, learning, and environmental enrichment can enhance neurogenesis, while stress and aging can reduce it. Stem cell research holds promise for enhancing regeneration. Stem cells can divide and differentiate into multiple cell types. Scientists are working to harness stem cells for regenerative medicine, to repair damaged tissues, to treat diseases. Induced pluripotent stem cells, adult cells that have been reprogrammed to behave like embryonic stem cells, offer a way to generate patient-specific stem cells. But regeneration and repair are not the only ways the body maintains itself. There is also prevention, the mechanisms that protect against damage. The immune system protects against pathogens. DNA repair mechanisms fix mutations. Antioxidant systems neutralize reactive oxygen species. Enzymes like catalase and superoxide dismutase, and molecules like vitamins C and E, all help protect cells from oxidative damage. The body also has mechanisms for dealing with misfolded or damaged proteins. Chaperone proteins help other proteins fold correctly. If a protein is too damaged, it is tagged for degradation and broken down. The autophagy pathway is a cellular recycling system that breaks down damaged organelles and protein aggregates. Autophagy declines with age, and enhancing it is being explored as a strategy for promoting healthy aging. All of these protective and repair mechanisms require coordination, require communication between cells and systems. The body is not a collection of independent parts, but an integrated whole, a system of systems, each influencing the others. Consider the coordination required for something as simple as standing up from a chair. Your brain decides to stand, and motor commands are sent to muscles in your legs. But standing also requires adjusting blood pressure, which involves the cardiovascular system and the autonomic nervous system. It requires balance, which involves the vestibular system, vision, and proprioception. It requires energy, which means the respiratory and cardiovascular systems must deliver oxygen and glucose to the muscles. All of this happens in a fraction of a second, coordinated seamlessly without conscious thought. Or consider what happens when you eat a meal. You chew, involving jaw and tongue muscles. You swallow, a reflex controlled by the brainstem. The food travels to your stomach, which secretes acid and enzymes. The stomach and intestines communicate with the brain through nerves and hormones. As nutrients are absorbed, hormones like insulin are released. The liver processes the nutrients. The kidneys adjust their filtering. The immune system monitors for pathogens. All of this happens automatically, a symphony of coordinated processes. The complexity is staggering, and yet it all arises from relatively simple components following physical and chemical laws. The cell is the basic unit, and cells are made of molecules, and molecules are made of atoms. There is no vital force that animates the body. Life is a physical process, and everything about the body can be explained in terms of physics and chemistry, though the complexity is so great that we are still far from complete understanding. This reductionist view has been enormously successful in science. It has allowed us to understand the mechanisms of life at the molecular level, to develop treatments for diseases, to extend lifespans. But reductionism has limitations. Knowing how each component works does not always tell you how the system as a whole behaves. Emergent properties, properties that arise from the interactions of components but are not present in the components themselves, are common in complex systems. Consciousness is an emergent property of the brain. Life itself is an emergent property of the organization of molecules into cells and systems. To fully understand the body, we need both reductionism, breaking it down into parts, and holism, understanding how the parts work together. We need to appreciate both the details and the big picture. Let us think now about the relationship between the body and the environment. The body is not a closed system, but an open system, constantly exchanging matter and energy with the environment. You breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. You eat food and excrete waste. You absorb sunlight. You lose heat to the environment or absorb heat from it. The boundary between you and the environment is not as clear as it might seem. The microbiota, the trillions of microorganisms that live on and in your body, blur the boundary even further. Are they part of you or separate organisms? They are separate in that they have their own DNA, their own evolutionary history. But they are part of you in that they live in intimate association with your body. They contribute to your health. They have co-evolved with you. The human body is not a single organism, but a community, a collection of human cells and microbial cells living together. The environment affects the body in many ways. Air pollution can damage the lungs. Exposure to toxins can damage organs. Noise pollution can increase stress. Light pollution can disrupt circadian rhythms. The built environment can influence physical activity and mental health. But the environment is not just a source of challenges, it is also a source of resources, of beauty, of connection. Exposure to nature, to green spaces, to sunlight has been shown to improve mental health, reduce stress, enhance cognitive function. Social environments, the people around you, profoundly influence your health and well-being. Supportive relationships buffer against stress. Isolation and loneliness are harmful. The body, then, is not separate from the world, but embedded in it, shaped by it, interacting with it. To understand the body, we must understand it in context, as part of a larger system that includes the environment. This brings us to the concept of well-being, which is broader than health. encompassing not just the absence of disease, but the presence of positive qualities, energy, vitality, comfort, the ability to do what you want to do, to enjoy life, to connect with others, to find meaning and purpose. Well-being is subjective, based on how you feel, but it is also influenced by objective factors: your physical health, your social relationships, your economic circumstances, your environment. The body contributes to well-being by functioning well, by being free of pain and disease, by having the energy to engage with life. But well-being also depends on the mind, on how you perceive and interpret your experiences, on your attitudes and beliefs, on your sense of control and agency. Psychology and medicine are increasingly recognizing the importance of a holistic approach, addressing not just disease but well-being, not just the body but the person. This includes attention to mental health, to social needs, to meaning and purpose, to quality of life. It recognizes that the goal of healthcare is not just to extend life, but to enhance life. The body has carried you through your life, and it will carry you until the end. It has grown with you, changed with you, adapted to your circumstances, recorded your experiences. Every scar, every wrinkle, every grey hair tells a story, marks a moment, reflects the passage of time. The body is a living history, and yet, for all its complexity, for all its remarkable capabilities, the body is also fragile, vulnerable, impermanent. It can be injured, can become ill, will eventually wear out. This vulnerability is part of the human condition, part of what it means to be mortal. Accepting this vulnerability, acknowledging the limits of the body, is part of living fully, of appreciating the time you have. Many spiritual and philosophical traditions emphasize the impermanence of the body, the transience of physical existence. Some view the body as a temporary vessel. Others view body and mind as inseparable. Regardless of one's beliefs about what comes after death, the body is the vehicle for this life, the means by which you experience the world. This makes caring for the body not a vain concern, but a wise and compassionate one. Taking care of your body, nourishing it, exercising it, resting it, protecting it, is taking care of yourself, honoring the gift of life. It is also taking care of your ability to contribute to the world, to care for others, to pursue your goals. You cannot do much if your body is sick or in pain. Caring for your body is a foundation for living well. But caring for the body is not just about avoiding illness. It is also about experiencing the pleasures the body offers. The taste of good food, the warmth of the sun, the coolness of water, the touch of another person, the joy of movement, the satisfaction of physical exertion, the relaxation of rest. The body is not just a machine to be maintained, but a source of experience, of pleasure, of connection to the physical world. The body also connects you to others. Through touch, through gesture, through facial expression, through physical presence, you communicate and connect. The embrace of a loved one, the hand-holding of friends, these are bodily experiences, ways of being together that go beyond words. And the body connects you to the natural world, to the cycles of day and night, the seasons, the elements. You are an animal, a mammal, a primate, a part of nature. Your body follows the same biological rhythms, responds to the same environmental cues, is made of the same substances as all other living things. The carbon in your bones was once in plants, in animals, in the air. The water in your cells has been cycling through the planet for billions of years. You are not an isolated individual, but a temporary configuration of matter and energy, part of the vast, interconnected web of life. This perspective, this sense of connection to something larger than yourself, can be a source of meaning and comfort. It can reduce the sense of isolation. It can inspire a sense of responsibility, a recognition that your actions affect not just yourself, but others, human and non-human, present and future. It can inspire awe and gratitude, a sense of wonder at the fact that you exist. Science, in revealing the workings of the body, in tracing the connections between molecules and cells and systems, in showing how life arises from non-life, how consciousness emerges from matter, how you are made of stardust, does not diminish the wonder. If anything, it deepens it. The more you understand about the body, the more astonishing it becomes that any of this works at all. That you are here, alive, thinking, feeling, being. There is a kind of poetry in physiology, a beauty in the way the body operates, in the coordination of trillions of cells, in the feedback loops and regulatory systems, in the balance between stability and change. There is grace in the way the heart beats, the way the lungs breathe, the way the body heals itself, the way neurons fire and create thought. It is all happening right now, inside you, as you listen to these words. You are a miracle of organization, of complexity arising from simplicity, of life persisting against entropy. And here, at the end of our journey, we return to where we began, to you, to your body, to the quiet, ongoing processes that sustain you, the cells dividing, the proteins folding, the ions flowing, the signals transmitting, the blood circulating, the air moving in and out of your lungs, the food being digested, the waste being filtered, the immune cells patrolling, the neurons firing. All of it happening, all of it coordinated, all of it you. You are not separate from these processes. You are these processes. There is no ghost in the machine. You are the machine, and the machine is alive and aware. The feeling of being you arises from the physical processes occurring in your brain, from the patterns of neural activity. It is strange and wonderful that matter can be arranged in such a way that it becomes aware of itself. Perhaps there is no ultimate answer to the question of meaning. Perhaps meaning is not something discovered, but something created, something we make through our choices, through our actions, through the relationships we form. Perhaps the meaning of your body is simply that it allows you to be here, to experience life, to connect with others. Your body is temporary. One day, the processes that sustain it will cease. The organization will dissolve, the pattern will fade. But for now, you are here. The sun rises and sets, the seasons turn, and you are part of it all. A living being on a living planet. Your heart beats, your lungs breathe, your neurons fire. You are alive. Take a deep breath. Feel the air fill your lungs. Feel your chest expand. Feel the oxygen entering your blood. Let the breath out slowly. Feel your body relax. This is you being alive, participating in the exchange of gases that has sustained life for billions of years. This breath, this moment, this awareness. Feel your heartbeat, that steady rhythm that has been with you since before you were born. Place your hand on your chest. Feel the pulse beneath your skin, the contraction and relaxation, the pumping of blood. This is your heart, working tirelessly, sustaining you. Notice the sensations in your body, the feeling of your body in space, the weight of your body if you are sitting or lying, the contact between your body and whatever supports it. Notice the subtle movements, the slight shifts, the rise and fall of your breathing. This is your proprioception, your sense of your body, your awareness of yourself as an embodied being. Your body is a gift, inherited from billions of years of evolution, assembled from atoms forged in stars, organized into this particular form, you. It is imperfect, vulnerable, temporary, but it is also resilient, adaptive, capable of extraordinary things. It has brought you this far, through all the challenges and changes, through growth and learning, through joy and sorrow, through the countless moments that make up a life. Treat it with kindness. Nourish it with good food, with movement, with rest, with pleasure, with care. Listen to what it tells you, the signals of hunger and thirst, of tiredness and pain, of comfort and vitality. Respect its limits, but also appreciate its capabilities. Use it to explore the world, to create, to connect, to experience all the richness that life offers. And when the time comes, when the body can no longer sustain itself, know that you have been part of something larger, something ancient and ongoing. The atoms that make up your body will return to the earth, will be taken up by other living things, will continue in the cycle of matter and energy. The information in your DNA, if you have children, will be passed on, will continue in new forms. The memories others have of you, the impacts you have made, will persist for a time, your influence rippling outward. This is the nature of existence, the pattern of life and death, of creation and dissolution, of order arising from chaos and eventually returning to it. You are part of this pattern, a brief eddy in the flow of matter and energy through the universe, a moment of awareness, of experience, of being. And in this moment, right now, you are alive. Your body is functioning, your mind is aware, you are here. That is enough, that is everything. The universe, through you, is experiencing itself. The atoms that were once scattered in stars have come together in this particular configuration, and for a brief, precious time, they are aware. They are you. Rest now in this awareness, in the quiet miracle of your existence, in the gentle processes that sustain you, in the soft rhythm of breath and heartbeat, in the deep, ancient patterns that connect you to all of life, to the earth, to the cosmos. You are a living body, a conscious being, a part of the great unfolding story of the universe. You are here, you are alive, you are enough. And for this moment, this breath, this heartbeat, this awareness, there is nothing more to do than simply be, to exist, to rest in the quiet wonder of being human, of having a body, of being alive. The journey is complete, the story is told. But your story continues, breath by breath, heartbeat by heartbeat, moment by moment, as long as you are here. Be well, be kind to yourself, be alive. Thank you for journeying through the human body with me. May you rest peacefully with a deeper appreciation for the extraordinary vessel that carries you through life.